No one expected him to marry her. Even his mother, a woman who'd supported every decision he ever made, paused when she saw the engagement photo. She didn't ask much. Just one quiet question, Ethan. Are you sure he was? More than ever. They met at a conference. He was there as a tech entrepreneur. White 30-something clean suit, clean pitch. She was there as a keynote speaker on accessible design. Black, brilliant, and in a wheelchair. He talked about innovation. She talked about dignity. He barely remembered the other panelists. But her. He remembered the way she looked a CEO straight in the eyes and dismantled his argument with quiet facts and sharper grace. He remembered the pause, the room listening. He remembered wanting to know her name. Their wedding wasn't big, but it was real. Layla wore white satin that fell elegantly over the wheels of her chair, a crystal tiara tucked beneath her veil. She didn't walk down the aisle, but she moved every heart in that room. Ethan stood beside her in a cream-colored suit, watching her like she was sunlight after a long storm. But not everyone saw what he saw. Some guests whispered behind champagne flutes, "Why would a man like him marry someone like her?" They didn't know the full story. They didn't know the strength it took for her to love again, or the gentleness it took for him to earn it. They didn't know that she'd been carrying a secret for 2 years, and that on their wedding night in a room lit by candles and scattered rose petals. Layla stood up. Yes, the woman in the wheelchair stood. Wait, she could walk. Did she lie to him? Was it a trick, a test, a miracle? The truth is deeper than all of that, and once you hear it, you might never see love the same way again. Ethan didn't remember a single other person on stage that day, but he remembered her. Layla spoke from her chair like she was 6 feet tall. There was something unshakable in her voice, like steel wrapped in velvet. She didn't raise her tone. She didn't have to. The room leaned in. After the panel, he found her in the hallway. She was adjusting the height of her chair. He walked up, smiled, and said, "That was the most honest 10 minutes I've heard in years." She looked up, eyebrows slightly raised, lips curled, amused but cautious. "You're not going to ask for a selfie now, are you?" He laughed. She didn't. "Coffee?" he asked. She stared for a second too long, then nodded. That coffee turned into 5 hours. No flirting, no small talk, no performance. They talked about society, identity, shame, software access, and bad airline policies. Layla wasn't quick to trust. She'd met too many men who wanted to save her, others who fetishized the chair, and the worst those who said all the right things, until they didn't. She'd heard it before, "You're so brave. I don't even notice the wheelchair." And then always, "So, will you walk again someday?" But Ethan didn't ask. He didn't pretend the chair wasn't there, but he never treated it like it was a tragedy either. He asked, "If you could change one thing in the world right now, just one, what would it be?" She smiled. For real this time. They kept things quiet. No Instagram, no dinner parties, not out of shame, but because being seen often meant being judged. When they went out, people assumed Ethan was her brother. One waitress asked if Layla needed a special spoon. A colleague once whispered, "She's beautiful, but are you two thinking about kids? Like, is that even an option?" Even Ethan's mom, sweet as ever, said once over tea, "She's lovely, honey. Truly. I just hope you're ready for this kind of life." Layla heard the silences, the careful pauses, the unspoken doubt. So she waited for the day Ethan would slowly pull away like others had. But he didn't. He never asked when she'd get better, never treated her like an inspiration. He never looked at the chair like it was something he had to love through. He just loved her, fully, presently, without projections. A year in, Ethan proposed, not on a rooftop, not with candles, just in their kitchen, while Layla was chopping cucumbers. "Can I be your wheelchair guy for life?" he asked, holding up a ring with olive oil still on his fingers. Layla stared, then laughed through tears. Only if you agree to load the chair into the car for every Target run, she said. He did, and she said yes. The guests were gone. The champagne glasses half empty, the bouquet wilted in a forgotten vase. But to Ethan the wedding wasn't over. Not really. He stood in their honeymoon suite, watching his wife, the woman who had just changed his life by saying 2 words at the altar, I do. Layla sat in her chair veil, still on her dress, folding like waves around her legs. Candles glowed softly in the corners of the room. Music hummed faintly from a speaker by the window. The room was ready for a story neither of them had ever told before. Ethan poured them both a glass of champagne. He sat beside her where he always sat. Close enough to feel, far enough to honor space. And then, Layla looked at him. There was something different in her eyes. Not fear, but something between vulnerability and resolve. Ethan, she said gently, can we sit for a minute? Of course, he replied without hesitation. She placed her glass down, her hands folded in her lap fingertips, twitching like they did when she was preparing to say something that might shake the room. There's something I've never told you, she began. Not because I was afraid, but because I needed to know who you really are first. Ethan didn't move, didn't blink. He just listened. You know my story. Spinal cord injury. 21. They said I'd never walk again. And for a long time, they were right. He nodded. Quietly. But 2 years ago, I entered a clinical trial, experimental neurorehab. They didn't promise miracles, just a shot. And slowly, something started happening. Layla inhaled sharply. Ethan leaned in, not physically but emotionally, a quiet surrender. First I could feel my toes, then my knees, then I could stand. For a few seconds, with help. I can walk. A little. With effort. With pain. It's not pretty. It's not easy. And it's not always worth it. She looked him in the eyes. Unflinching. I didn't tell you because I've had men fall in love with the idea of me walking again. As if I became more desirable the closer I got to being less disabled. Her voice cracked, but only slightly. I needed to know you loved this version of me, not the possibility of someone else. Ethan blinked. His throat tightened, but he didn't interrupt. He simply reached for her hand and whispered, I love you, Layla, for your mind, for your fire, for your heart. If you never stood a day in your life, I'd still be the luckiest man in the world. Her eyes welled up, but not from sadness. I want to show you something, she said. She shifted in her chair, moved slowly, deliberately. Her hands pressed into the mattress. Her arms, trained by years of transfers and therapy, carried her weight with practiced grace. She slid her legs forward. Her bare feet touched the floor. Ethan instinctively moved, ready to help, but she held up a hand. Stay. And then, Layla stood, not gracefully, not effortlessly, but with power. The dress swayed around her knees. Her veil shimmered in the candlelight. Her legs trembled, but she stood tall in a way that had nothing to do with height. She took one step, then another, slow, careful, beautiful. She walked across the room, not toward pride, not toward proof, but toward trust. Ethan didn't speak. He just held her, gently, firmly, like he was holding something sacred. She collapsed into him, not from weakness, but release. Tears slipped down her cheek onto the lapel of his suit. You didn't have to do that, he whispered. I know, she said, but I wanted to, not to impress you, to trust you. He smiled a real unfiltered smile. Then I want you to know nothing changes. Not my heart, not my love, not my choice. They sat together for a long time that night, talking, laughing, not about her legs, not about her walking, but about their vows, their future dog, their dream to visit Morocco, about things that mattered more than limbs or limits. The wedding night wasn't about a miracle. It was about something more rare than that woman who chose to stay seated, until she knew love was a place safe enough to stand. The morning after, sunlight poured through the sheer white curtains, painting soft gold across the hardwood floor. Layla woke up first, as she usually did. She didn't stand. She didn't reach for anything dramatic. She just turned to her chair and settled in. No hesitation, no apology, just a quiet reclaiming of self. She rolled to the mirror, fixed the strands of hair that had come loose from the night before, adjusted the corner of her veil out of pure reflex. When she turned around, Ethan was there, leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, eyes soft. "Still feel like the luckiest man alive?" she asked with a sly grin. He smiled, even luckier than yesterday. Breakfast was unhurried. They laughed over toast and strawberries. They didn't talk about walking, or wheelchairs, or milestones, just them. Two humans who had decided to build a life where no part of the body working or not defined the value of the soul inside it. Later that afternoon, they passed by a couple in the hotel lobby. An older woman leaned in and whispered to her husband, "He must really love her. She's so lucky." Layla heard it. Of course she did. She always did. She turned to Ethan and whispered back with a smirk, "Think I should tell her I booked this entire hotel for our honeymoon?" Ethan laughed. "Nah. Let her stay amazed." A few weeks later, Layla uploaded a video. Not for likes, not for shock, but for visibility. The title, "What They Miss When I Stand." In the video, she sat in her chair, her usual confident, steady self. She shared her journey, not as a motivational pitch, not as inspiration porn, but as education. Halfway through, she stood, with the help of a cane. Slow, intentional, measured. And then she said into the camera, "People always cheer when I stand, but they miss the strength it takes to sit every single day and still choose to live fully. I'm not stronger because I walk. I'm not more worthy because I can. This chair isn't my weakness, it's my freedom." The video went viral. But Ethan, he stayed out of it, quietly, intentionally. When a reporter finally asked him, "What's it like being married to such a brave woman?" he answered, "She's not brave because she stood. She's brave because she waited until love felt safe to stand at all." 3 years passed. On their anniversary, Ethan handed Layla a small leather-bound journal. Inside, on the first page in his own handwriting, it read, "I fell in love with a woman who rolls. I married one who sometimes walks. But I'll grow old beside the one who moves hearts, no matter how she gets there." She cried when she read it, not because it was poetic, but because it was true. That night they danced, one foot at a time, her arms wrapped around his neck, his hands steady at her back. And for once there was no surprise left, no fear, no test. Just joy unfolding slowly, step by step, like the kind of love that chooses you, exactly as you are. Closing thought. We talk a lot about love stories, but we don't talk enough about the ones that begin not when someone saves you, but when someone sees you. This wasn't a story about walking. It was about choosing someone long before they ever stood, and staying beside them long after.